bespoke radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Well, Fade to Black, how you doing? Man, what a day here in the bunker. All right, we're ready. This is Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. Today is Tuesday, March 7th, 66 days into the new year, just 299 days left. We are live from a bunker somewhere in downtown Burbank, California. And I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black. For KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, the planet. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? I got to tell you, crazy day here. I'll get around to all of that in just a minute. Tonight, Andrew Collins from the UK. He's one of the very, very best, and I will guarantee a good show tonight. Tomorrow night, Marla Martinson is here. Man, I can't wait for this. It's going to be a great show. Hollywood matchmaker, Ouija, and some other stuff. Marla's great. That's tomorrow night. Thursday is another Fader night. And it's not just another Fader night. It's a very special presentation because it is the 20th anniversary of the Phoenix Lights. And our guest is going to be Dr. Lynn Katai. She is going to be here. Also, warming up the show for Lynn will be John Rappaport and his No More Fake Newsroom live. Call-in numbers 323-825-5045. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. That's what you want to do, at JChurchRadio. Facebook, YouTube, everything is Fade to Black. Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, Jimmy Church Radio. Easy enough to follow, like, and subscribe. Do it now. Hashtag F2B is the sandbox on Twitter, which we use TweetDeck. We don't bite. Come and hang out with us. There will be 2,000-3,000 tweets tonight. Come and hang out with us and join the conversation. Any questions or comments during the show, just use hashtag F2BQ. Email is jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. All right. A note on the show tonight. I just want to get this out of the way so you understand. Rita and her dedication to the Fade or Not family and the exclusivity of the membership area, her desire is to have the very best. And trust me, for me to rise to her standards, that's a whole nother story. All right. And we are doing our best, but she has very, very, very high standards. The look of the website, the video, the audio, the guest, everything that we do here is Rita's standards. And one of the things that she's the project is to turn this into a television studio as well. All right. Now, this is a radio broadcast first and foremost, but and that's what we do here. But for the membership area to have a television feed coming in, guest on video, and some other things that would happen in the membership area on the Bunker Cam, is a goal of ours. And today we were very, very close. So what we wanted to do today for the first time and surprise everybody was to have Andrew Collins live with a video feed coming in from the UK. Now, it sounds easy at first So just let me explain something. I'm going to do this very, very quickly. We have multiple audio feeds that go out of the studio on different computers. And that is what the setup is here. Now, when you go to bring in video and live video feeds like the video cam that we have going now that brings in a whole nother set of problems and rules. How do we get a live video feed that's in sync with everything else and make everything work at the same time? It's difficult, but because this is a radio studio and trying to make it radio and television it's possible and it's going to happen. And today we were so close, but we had to pull the plug because the show had to go on tonight. So this is what ultimately ended up happening. No, we're not doing the live video feed with Andrew Collins. We ended up having to do a pre-record with Andrew Collins, and it was just finished a few minutes ago, right before showtime. So that's what's going to happen tonight. So, but what it will enable me to do is during the show, I'm going to hang out in the chat room. I'm going to hang out on Twitter and just have a great time with everybody. And maybe I'll get some really cool signs up on the bunker cam or something like that. So that's ultimately what's going to happen tonight. Okay, the interview itself was recorded. It's a full interview, and it was just finished a few minutes ago. So we're good to go there. Everything is cool. It's just that tonight I'm going to hang out in the chat rooms and Twitter. Starting next week at some point, it depends on the guest and their video feed and their cameras, high def, all of that. But as the opportunity presents itself with different guests, if we can pull in a live video feed, then we will do the simulcast in the bunker cam. Okay, and we're very, very, very close. It's software, it's encoders, it's import, export, this, it's a crazy thing. But we're close to getting it done, and hopefully next week we'll be doing that in the membership area. Okay? All right. There you go. Subscribe to our podcast, by the way. We have over 600 archive shows, custom apps, Apple, Android, all platforms, just $2 a month. Just go to jimmychurchradio.com, click on the podcast banner. Today in the membership area, we were a little bit late on doing stuff because we were working on the live video feeds and connecting with the UK. But everything is up and updated in the membership area, podcast, all of that. It did eventually get done. Check out all of our sponsors, Life Change Tea, getthetea.com, River Moon Coffee, Studio Dome Speakers. Click on their banners over at jimmychurchradio.com. All of the promo codes that you need for discounts or free shipping and everything that you are entitled to as a fade or not is right there in the banners. So go and click, support the show, support yourself, support us. That's how you do it here in America. Contact in the Desert is coming up May 19th through the 22nd. Our guest tonight, Andrew Collins, will be there. Tickets and info are over at jimmychurchradio.com. This year, you've got George Norrie, you've got Graham Hancock, Jacques Vallée, Robert Bivol, Robert Schock, David Wilcock, Corey Good, Jim Mars, Giorgio Tsoukalos, Richard Dolan. Tonight's guest, Andrew Collins, Linda Moulton Howe, Whitley Strieber, David Sereda, and another 20 or 30 speakers and authors. I've lost count. Just go over and click on the Contact in the Desert banners. Now, we are giving away passes, everybody. There's one entry per person. Just go to our website, click on the contest banner. The pass is non-transferable. I need to mention this on every show because I know how cool it is to win, right? Everybody wants to win. So if you go and enter and you do win and you can't go, just let us know. That's all you got to do. All right, be cool. Let us know, and then we will be able to draw another name for somebody that can go. All right? Thank you, and good luck to all of you Fadernauts. Let's get the show cracking. Happy birthday to, today, Bryan Cranston. Bryan Cranston has turned into the actor. He is really, really, really good. And scary, too, as well. And just watched a series with him. I'm going to defer this to Rita. What's the series where he was the gangster that we just watched? Oh, man. I can't remember the name of it. We binge watch too many series, and we just finished it. Happy birthday to today. Our dead guy's birthday today. Rick Mayall. And Rick, born in 1958, died in 2014. Died at the age of 56, by the way. Was a British comedian who's best known for his role in the television series The Young Ones, but also for his role in the film Drop Dead Fred. He played Fred in Drop Dead Fred. And he was great. He was funny. And I love that movie. And he passed away at the age of 56 in 2014. He died at his home in Barnes, London. And a full public confirmation of the cause of death has yet to be announced. This was back in 2014. Although his wife stated that he died of a heart attack after a morning run. Man, crazy, isn't it? Happy birthday, Rick Mayall. On this day in history, 1876, it happened. Alexander Graham Bell patents the telephone. Fate or fact. After Switzerland, now listen to this. After Switzerland, the world's largest per capita gold reserves are held by Lebanon. And that is a fate or fact. Man, that's a good Bryan Cranston gif. I'm going to go ahead. He's dancing. All right. Well, the announcement came today as I came to life and was jumping around on my cell phone and checking out Twitter. There it was, the CIA and WikiLeaks today. Well, turns out the CIA has become the preeminent hacking operation. That's right. Apparently sneaking into high-tech phones, televisions, to spy on people worldwide. And this explosive WikiLeaks publication of all of these internal CIA documents appeared on the web earlier today. To hide its operations, the CIA routinely adopted hacking techniques that enabled them to appear as if they were hackers in Russia. WikiLeaks also claimed that nearly all of the CIA's arsenal of privacy, crushing cyber weapons that have been stolen, and the tools are potentially in the hands of criminals and foreign spies. Yeah. WikiLeaks also claimed that the stolen tools ended up in the hands of former U.S. government hackers and contractors, of whom leaked the documents back to WikiLeaks. United States Representative Ted Lieu of California said today he called for an immediate congressional investigation. He went on to say today, I'm deeply disturbed by the allegation that the CIA lost its arsenal of hacking tools. The ramifications could be devastating. We need to know if the CIA lost control of its hacking tools, who may have those tools, and how do we now protect the privacy of Americans? The potential privacy concerns are mind-boggling, end quote. WikiLeaks said it published the documents to show the potentially hazardous ramifications of the CIA's covert hacking program and the massive theft of those tools. Julian Assange said today, there is an extreme proliferation risk in the development of cyber weapons, end quote. WikiLeaks backed up the claims by publishing a massive trove of what it says are secret CIA documents, and calls the collection Year Zero. And it consists of 8,761 documents and files. The CIA today, citing a standing policy, of course, declined to say whether the published documents are genuine. Crazy days. The CIA response, and I'm quoting here, we do not comment on the authenticity or content of purported intelligence documents, end quote. Well, what does that tell you right there? It just tells you that the documents are real. There's somebody in the CIA that is leaking. I'm not sure if this person is going to end up coming forward and classified as a whistleblower and wind up in Russia, right? But the interesting thing here is for these documents to, and I'm going to get to some of these specific documents in a second, to appear to be Russian hackers, right? For the CIA to put that mask on and appear as if they are Russian. Interesting. Now, the other point, as crazy as that is, I have to say this, and I'm going to say this on record. Yeah, so what? So what? And the reason why I say that is, what is surprising here? Shouldn't the CIA be doing just that? I mean, look, I don't condone this. It's a scary thought. And what's going on with televisions and smart devices and your phones, that's a whole other thing, and I'll get to that in just a second. But it's the CIA. And that's exactly what they should be doing. I don't understand the shock. And just like when Snowden did all of his revelations, again, what did we think the NSA was doing? And I think that we all knew it, and I think that the pain was that it was confirmed. But it's the NSA. That's exactly what do we expect? I don't think anybody here should be surprised. The CIA rules in these documents say its hackers must use cyber weapons in a way that can't get traced back to the CIA, the U.S. government, or its witting partner companies. Now, that's directly lifted from the documents. Now, that's a scary thing to hear, scary thing to read. It's an internal document. But that's exactly what they should be doing. I'm not shocked. I'm not surprised. It's painful to read. Yes. They continue in the document. After a person, company, or government gets hacked, cybersecurity experts worldwide are typically hired to conduct reviews. These reviews of tools and techniques usually allow someone to identify the hacker. On this program, I talk about hacking. I've got different stories tonight. I've got breaking news that I'm going to be covering on just this. I talk about hacking and getting hacked all the time, right? And different cybersecurity companies that are coming back and reporting where the hacks are coming from. They look at all the metadata, and they figure it out. They look at the malware, possibly ISPs, and they trace this stuff back. North Korea, Russia, China. And it turns out that it just may be the CIA the entire time. WikiLeaks said there's an entire department within the CIA whose job it is to misdirect attribution by leaving behind the fingerprints of others, such as hackers in Russia. Of course. I mean, of course. Where is the surprise here? I mean, seriously, where's the shock? Cybersecurity experts have reportedly warned against the tendency to quickly blame a nation for a particular hack or attack. This revelation could lend to further credence to those like President Trump, who doubt whether Russia did indeed hack the Democrats in an attempt to sway the recent American election. Well, here you go. Right? Where is the surprise? All of this is certainly a game that is being played at levels and in dark areas of the world that you and I don't visit and we know very little about. What we do know about is what I talk about on this show. That's about it. Unless, and I'm being serious here, unless you are an ex-employee of the CIA, unless you are an ex-employee of the NSA or the NRO, unless you are any of that, then you don't know nothing. You don't know. And so when documents like this are leaked, it says one thing and one thing only. A, we have to take them at face value because we don't know. Is it fake news? Is it not? One of the great things about WikiLeaks that I enjoy is that it's coming directly from a source. It's not watered down. These are actual documents, or they should be actual documents. I'm sure that there's a vetting process that is involved here before they go and release the documents. Certainly, if WikiLeaks starts releasing fake documents, then WikiLeaks' value is diminished. right? So unless you are an ex-employee of the CIA, you don't know. You don't know anything. A team within the CIA developed spy software that infects Samsung smart TVs specifically, placing televisions on a fake off mode that still listens to conversations and sends them back to American spies. How long have I been talking about smart television, Samsung specifically, on this show? If you have a TV, tape over the microphone. You don't need voice-activated anything. Tape over the camera. You don't need that feed going out. And that goes with your computer. With your smartphone, you've got a problem. But these implications are real. And of course, you know, one of the weakest links that there are out there is Android. You know, how can your cell phone be some ultra-secure, cybersecurity safe thing? It's not. And neither is your television. It runs on Android. It's the easiest thing to hack into. The program is called Weeping Angel. It was created with the help of a British spy and their agency, MI5. WikiLeaks reports that another team within the CIA built hacking tools that can remotely control iPhones, iPads, all Android devices, secretly taking video from the camera, listening with the microphone, and tracking your location. Now, I've talked about this so much, and more on that in just a second. In the past, consumers have been warned, this audience has been warned, that Samsung TVs were eavesdropping on private conversations with the microphones implanted right there in the said TV. Now, I've reported that the NSA can turn on your phone remotely. I've done that enough. And I've also said that the CIA has a similar capability. Remember everything that I said with Brian Lunduke on this show about Pokemon Go. If you have any question about this ability, Pokemon Go is a CIA-funded, Niantic is a CIA-funded startup from CIA venture capital money. Pokemon Go has the ability, CIA designed tools. Google Earth is a Niantic CIA-funded technology that is incorporated right directly back into, developed by Niantic, developed and right back into the software for Pokemon Go. What is the CIA doing in the gaming industry? Think about this. Pokemon Go, if you have any questions about this, Pokemon Go wrestles control of your phone. And when it does that, it can turn on and off the microphone, on and off the video camera, know where you are within a couple of feet. Now, why would this be an important thing, an important tool? Think about this for a second. Any just somebody out there playing Pokemon Go, just out there, just roaming, right? And they know that a couple of people that they need to monitor are at a coffee shop. They're at a coffee shop. So what do? Man, just fire up Pokemon Go. Let's see if anybody has Pokemon Go downloaded in their phone in that coffee shop. Oh, there's 3 or 4. Okay, who's closest to them? Okay, this guy. Turn on his phone. It's that simple. Now, they are using your phone to listen to somebody else's conversation. And turn on the video camera. Maybe they can get this on video. They don't know where your phone is, where it's positioned, right? Well, how about something even darker than that? What if they activate your phone, Pokemon Go fires up, and they tell you that they place a Pokemon right next to the table where these two people are sitting and talking. And you've got to go up and get this Pokemon, maybe even fight him, right? So you're up there with your phone pointed at this table. The people at the table look at you, and you're playing Pokemon Go. You're nothing to them. It's not a concern. It's the perfect hidden agent. You don't know that you're working for the CIA. You don't have a clue. You're just playing Pokemon Go. They over having their coffee and their secret conversation that the CIA needs to monitor, right? They see you playing Pokemon Go, and they don't even notice you. It's perfect. Today, I talked about this last year. I talked about this constantly. And today, WikiLeaks drops this bomb. Now, I'm not saying that I have secret information. Everything about Niantic and everything about the CIA's venture capital arm and who runs Niantic and how that was set up going back, and their offices in Google right now at the Google, it's crazy, is true. It's all public information. You can go and find it yourself. Brian Lunduke has written some amazing research on this. You can go and check out all of that. But this is something that is real. So before you go and question me or question the CIA or their ability or the technology to turn on and off, if they can do it with Pokemon Go, that very same code is there to turn on and off your TV or your smart toothbrush. And you need to think about that. It's a crazy day in the world of tech with WikiLeaks. Go and read it. There's 8,000 documents right there. It's a nutty day. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. And let's go ahead and do this. Andrew Collins is the guest tonight. So this was recorded just before the show. So there you go. That's the good thing. The other thing is we'll be able to hang out tonight in Twitter. We can do that. Oh, where's there it is. For a second there, I thought I didn't have audio. It's all good. This is Fade to Black. Follow me on Twitter, @JChurchRadio. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. Andrew Collins is our guest. I'm going to hang out on Twitter. I'm going to hang out in the chat rooms. It's all good. This is Fade to Black. I'll be right back with Andrew Collins. Stay right there.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio.
When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Yes, Rivermoon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Göbekli Tepe.
Hi, folks. In a world of GMO, genetically modified organisms, that is, chemicals, processed foods, and a healthcare system that's unraveling like a cheap suit, it's time to prepare. God created herbs, and herbs help man. Our body can heal itself, just sometimes we need assistance. You need some help? GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. Our mild detox is quite powerful with its unique blend of 8 different herbs. And if you're looking for more, our non-GMO supplements will help you with different needs you might have. Health should be a top priority. Take care of your health naturally. Log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. Give your body a treat. Let the herbs do their thing naturally. Read all the testimonies on the website, GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. Sickness and viruses are like intruders, and herbs are like warriors. Let the tea work for you. That's GetTheTea.com.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, The Planet.
Hi, this is Chase Kletsky with Fate Magazine Radio, and you're listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station, where the Fadernauts rock.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Manson. You're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
All right. Welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Andrew Collins is live with us from the UK. Andrew Collins is a writer. He's a historian. He is the author of more than a dozen books that challenge the way we perceive the past. They include The Ashes of Angels, Tutankhamen, The Exodus Conspiracy, The Cygnus Mystery and LightQuest, which demonstrates that many UFOs are most likely plasma constructs that display sentience, clear intelligence, and interactive qualities. Now, in 2008, Andrew and colleague Nigel Skinner Simpson discovered a previously unrecorded cave complex beneath the pyramids of Giza, which was brought him worldwide acclaim, and it's a video that I have watched many, many times. Andrew is the author of Göbekli Tepe, The Genesis of the Gods. Göbekli Tepe is something that we talk about every single day on this show, and it reveals the role played by Göbekli Tepe in the origins of civilizations and the rise and myths of legends regarding the Watchers of the Book of Enoch, the Anunnaki of Mesopotamian mythology, and, of course, the Garden of Eden of the Book of Genesis. His new book, Atlantis in the Caribbean, pins down the source of Plato's Atlantis to the Caribbean island of Cuba and the Bahamian. I'm going to edit this later. His website, of course, is andrewcollins.com. I would like to welcome back to Fade to Black, Andrew Collins. Andrew, good morning. Good evening.
Jimmy, hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. And say archipelago, right?
Archipelago? I mean, I've no idea how to pronounce it either, so don't ask me.
It's called getting tongue-tied. And thank you for coming back to the show, Andrew. And as you know, I am a big reader of yours and a follower of yours. And I kind of want to start here. With everything that is going on now with Göbekli Tepe over the last 20 years, and of course Giza and the other megalithic sites around the world, how much do we not know versus what do we really know today?
Well, I mean, Göbekli Tepe was an eye-opener. It's changed everything that we perceive of the origins of civilization. Simply because it shouldn't exist. I mean, many different authors, ancient mystery writers, have postulated the idea of a lost civilization existing sometime during the last ice age, and that this lost civilization vanished or dissolved. However, somebody at the end of it was there to pass on a baton to the hunter-gatherers that became the first agriculturalists, the first builders of the first temples like Göbekli Tepe, that eventually led to the construction of monuments like the Great Pyramid and all the other great cities and temples and structures around the world. And that's what Göbekli Tepe does. It is that baton. It's the baton that takes us from the Ice Age through to our current civilization. We've never had that before. And the crucial thing about it is that the oldest monuments at Göbekli Tepe are the most sophisticated, the largest, the most significant in their alignments. And as they gradually are built across the centuries, they get more and more simple, their style changes, they become less sophisticated, the technology is gone. It's almost as if we're losing something, and that something is eventually lost and only regained with the rise of the great civilizations like Egypt and Sumeria and the Indus Valley, etc., probably places in China could be added to that, and elsewhere in the world too. And so that's the importance here, is it's that last glimmer of the lost civilization. Now, what exactly the lost civilization is, maybe we can try and come to later on in the discussion. But of course, the other big factor here is Atlantis. And this is something which I have been very interested in for most of my life. I've been writing about Atlantis for 40 odd years. And the crucial thing about this is that it almost becomes like our vision of this lost civilization. I say vision very carefully here, because I don't necessarily mean that it existed in the way that we perceive it. Our knowledge of Atlantis comes from a philosopher by the name of Plato. He lived around 350 BC, as we probably know. And somehow he gained information relating to this lost civilization, this landmass, this high culture that existed somewhere, and he wrote about it. Now, academics might suggest that this was fiction. Others might suggest that he was talking about something much more recently in time, maybe at Crete or Santorini, somewhere in the Mediterranean. But what he states is that at the end of the last ice age, he doesn't say that, he gives a date of 9,500 BC, that there was a civilization and it was destroyed in a night and a day of terrible floods and earthquakes, and that it sank, it disappeared, essentially. And he recounts the details of what this civilization looked like, the extent of its islands, the extent of the landmass. He gives details about where it's located, which essentially is somewhere in the Western Atlantic Ocean. That's what he makes very, very clear. He says that ancient voyagers used to be able to get to Atlantis. He said they would sail out of the Mediterranean via what were known as the Pillars of Hercules. And these were just two great rocks, one at the edge of Africa, one at the southwest corner of Europe. And the voyagers would go out, they would cross the Atlantic, they would finally come to Atlantis, and they would then use smaller islands as stepping stones to reach what he refers to as the opposite continent. And he uses that term at least twice, and it's very obvious that this is a reference to the American continent. So he's saying that somewhere off of the eastern Atlantic seaboard of the Americas was this very large island, part of a huge, empire that he sees as having existed, and that you could then use smaller islands to reach the Americas. Now, this has to be somewhere like the Bahamas and the Caribbean. And the more you look into it, the more obvious this becomes. You also find that a number of his contemporaries also wrote about very similar islands existing on the Western in the Western Atlantic, but they used other names for it. They called them essentially the Hesperides, which basically means the lands of the West, the lands of the setting sun. And various accounts talk about the Hesperides, and some of them talk about them being reached after 40-day sail. Now, that's almost precisely the amount of time that it took Christopher Columbus and the earliest European explorers to reach from, the Canary Islands, for instance, right the way across to the Bahamas, and the Lesser Antilles, and obviously the Greater Antilles, Cuba, Hispaniola, and obviously Haiti, and of course Puerto Rico. And this is where I think that you should start looking for Atlantis. I mean, over the years, it's been placed everywhere. It's been in the Arctic, it's been in the Mediterranean. More recently, some of my colleagues have championed it being in Antarctica. And the coolest place to place it at the moment is in Java, which was part of a much larger landmass once called Sunderland.
Right.
But, and here's the big but, that's not where Plato places it. It's very, very clear where he places it, and that's somewhere just to the east of the American continent.
Do you think that the intelligence that was there at Atlantis did some type of transoceanic transfer and that knowledge for not only structures but agriculture and government and religion became the progenitor of like Göbekli Tepe and eventually worked its way down into Giza in Egypt?
I'll be honest and say I don't think so. I mean, if you're looking for a population of Atlantis, which if we take to be the area around the Caribbean and the Bahamas, I think we have to look at it in terms of indigenous peoples that lived towards the end of the last ice age, around the time that science now tells us there was a huge cataclysm, possibly a comet impact event where fragments of a comet, perhaps hundreds of thousands of them, entered into the atmosphere and peppered the Earth over a series of days with many thousands of small fragments that probably exploded even before they hit the ground, causing wildfires, causing what's known as a nuclear winter, in other words, complete blackout of the sun, the moon, the stars, a drop in the temperature, bringing about a mini ice age that lasted 1,200 years, which went from about 10,800 BC through to around 9,600 BC, plus tsunamis, floods, perhaps even, tilts of the earth, things like this. Some terrible, terrible things probably went on at this time. And it wasn't something that just occurred in a day. There's evidence that there were events taking place across a period of several hundred years. It would have been a really bad time to live, I tell you. And, I think we ought to be thankful that we live today when things are relatively quiet in the cosmos, but this would not have been a good time to live. Now, somehow, Plato has got to know about this. He gives a date of 9,500, 9,600 BC. That's the tail end of all of these events. So it's not the beginning of them, it's a tail event. And he's obviously condensed the whole lot down into one terrible night and day, which is, he sees in terms of floods and earthquakes, but clearly it's a lot more complicated than that. And I think that he really was tapping into a stratum of lost knowledge relating to an event in human history in the relatively recent past that we're only now beginning to understand for the first time. But going back to your other question about, whether these ideas would have been carried across the Atlantic, reaching, let's say, the Mediterranean or the African coast and eventually making their way to Göbekli Tepe in Egypt, that's been the old style view of Atlantis. And I think that it was probably fostered in the 19th century by a US congressman by the name of Ignatius Donnelly. He wrote a book in 1882 called Atlantis, the Antediluvian World.
That's right.
And what he postulated was that Atlantis was this huge mother civilization existing in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and that it was destroyed, and that the peoples went to the west and they went to the east. They went to the Americas, they went to Africa and Europe, and that they seeded our current civilization. And he drew comparisons between the different civilizations, like the Maya, the Aztecs on one side, maybe the Peruvian civilizations, the Incas, and also he compared, their pyramids, for instance, with those of Sumeria, Egypt, and others, of course, around the world. He also looked at things like animals and plants and things like this, and showed that there was some kind of relationship that could only be explained by a mother civilization, a land mass that no longer existed. But I'm afraid that since that time, we know a lot more about the Atlantic Ocean, about the so-called rift, the Atlantic Rift. We know about the movement of the continents. The Wagoner, was it Alfred Wagoner, and the continental shifts idea. And you can actually cut up all of the different continents and stick them together, and they all fit nicely. We know that there never was a huge landmass in the Atlantic. If anything, it's growing. The area that he was talking about, which was the area of the Azores Islands, right in the middle of the Atlantic, he cited them as the tips of the highest mountains of Atlantis. We now know that's not correct. So, this whole idea about something in the Atlantic, seeding the civilizations of both sides is probably not right. The other problem that we've got is time frames, because we know that most of the civilizations in the Americas didn't really start kicking off until around, 3,000-4,000 BC. There's very little evidence of mass civilization before that time, whereas obviously we now know that in the Mediterranean and in the Near East and obviously Europe, you have civilizations and high culture going back not just to the time of Göbekli Tepe, which is 9,500, 9,600 BC, but you have evidence of high culture in places like Czechoslovakia, Russia, and an area that I'm taking increasing interest in, which is the Altai-Siberia area, perhaps 30 to 40,000 years ago. So it changes everything, and it changes the angles of everything as far as the migrations out from one location to the next. I think that I would probably not be wrong to say that if we look at things via the Ignatius Donnelly route now, I don't think it really fits with what we know from archaeology.
But the simplest answer for me sometimes is the way to go. And where I get a little bit confused is where Göbekli Tepe shouldn't have existed. If we listen to Orthodox academia, right? It just simply shouldn't have existed. But apparently they were fairly upright at 9,500 BC, right? They had artisans. They were able to quarry. They had stonemasons. They obviously had agriculture and organization. They had a leader. Somebody said we need to build this complex, right? All of that is the opposite of Stone Age man running around in animal skins, right? Foraging for seeds. That intelligence, that learning was taught and came from somewhere. If not Atlantis, where did it come from?
Let's paint the scene really in 9,600 BC. I mean, firstly, everyone was, in theory, hunter-gatherers at that time. They led lives that were virtually nomadic. They would create temporary settlements that they would remain at for a period of the year and then move on, probably following herds of animals that were valuable to them for many different reasons. And that's the type of people that existed across most of the Eurasian continent at this time. And then suddenly we got Göbekli Tepe. How did that happen?
Right.
Well, I think what's important is that at the tail end of this last ice age, and that 9,600 BC, is when everything changed. The climate changed again. We went from a very, very cold period, which also brought with it severe droughts as well, because most of the water would have been held within the ice, to suddenly we have good weather again, the temperatures rising, different plants, different trees are growing, and somebody thought it's a good time to start building. That does seem to have been the case. But why would they do that? And I think that the first clue comes from legends all the way around the world relating to catastrophes disasters relating to fire and flood and things falling out of the sky and whatever, because many of these tell us that after all of this passed away, the surviving members, the Noah and his wife, like people from various traditions around the world, who either got on a boat or went to the highest mountain or hid in a cave or something. And I mean, obviously, there's thousands of these accounts. One of the first things they did, they built an altar and prayed to their God and said, please don't do that ever again. In other words, they felt the necessity to go out and construct temples and monuments to try and appease the gods or goddesses or spirits, whatever you want to see them as, who were considered to have caused these catastrophes, to have caused these cosmic events. And the fact that Göbekli Tepe is built within 100 years, perhaps even less, of the end of this mini ice age known as the Younger Dryas cannot be ignored. I mean, very clearly there's a relationship. And there's a lady who wrote a book called Catastrophobia, whose name is Barbara Han Clough. And she talked about this cataclysm, and she basically said that after it, people would still have been in a state of shock for many millennia. And she actually started referring to it as catastrophobia. And I think that this is exactly what was going on at this time. People were in fear that every time a comet appeared in the sky, it would all kick off again and we would have more fires and floods, and perhaps this time the whole world would be destroyed. So what they needed to do was to try and appease these supernatural creatures, these spirits that were seen to be responsible for this type of cataclysm. And from my own research, the most common form of supernatural that is seen to be connected with this sort of trickster activity is canines, wolves, foxes, big dogs, things like that. I mean, just think in terms of Fenris, the Fenris wolf of Norse tradition. It was that will cause, what is it? I've gone out of my head now. The name of the Armageddon in Norse tradition will come at Ragnarok.
Right.
And it will cause Ragnarok, but very clearly, Ragnarok is based on the memory of something in the past and the fear of it happening again. The cause of that was Fenris and the other big wolves or canines that came into the sky. And I must credit this idea of connecting these supernatural canines with comet events to the guy I've just put down, and that's Ignatius Donnelly, because directly after he did the book Atlantis, the Antediluvian World, he wrote a second book called Ragnarok, and I might not get the exact title right, but I think it was something like The Age of Fire and Ice, which looked at all of these traditions of catastrophe myths around the world and came to the conclusion that firstly that they were based on some kind of comet impact towards the end of the last ice age, and secondly that the culprit that was seen to have caused it was some kind of huge canine or dog or something like that in many of the legends. And even when the first Jesuit priests got into Mexico after the time of discovery, they found priests doing rituals to stop cataclysms taking place when comets appeared in the sky, and they would wear loincloths of foxes generally, and also I think a lion, I think that he saw them. Now this reminds us of the twin pillars at Göbekli Tepe, those in the enclosure D, huge 5.5 metre, 18 feet tall pillars in the middle of the enclosure, anthropomorphic in nature. They both wear fox pelt loincloths. And on one of them, there's a symbol which I have identified as very clearly a symbol of a comet. And there are various other really interesting glyphs and symbols on them as well, which which also beg explanation, basically. But the final answer to what you were saying earlier on is, if you are looking for the absolute seedbed of civilization, I do not believe it is Atlantis. I do not believe that it is Java or Sunderland. I believe that it's the area of the Altai region of Siberia. Recently, archaeologists have discovered a previously unknown type of human population known as Denisovans there. These lived certainly down to around 40,000 BC, and arguably they lived and continued to thrive in that region probably till around 20,000 BC. And there's absolute evidence that they had high culture, advanced human behaviour. They rode horses. They created the most extraordinary jewellery. They pierced holes in stone using high-speed drills. They used bone needles to make tailored clothing, and so much more is coming out. And this has only been coming out in the past 5 years. My next book, which is already with the publishers, which is called The Cygnus Key, talks about this and shows that everything that is going on at Göbekli Tepe has its origins in the area of the Altai region and slightly to the east at a place called Lake Baikal, a huge inland sea, and that this is the seedbed of human civilization, not Atlantis. Atlantis was certainly never here.
Well, okay, what if we find what is really key here, and I don't mean to be cavalier, but the belt buckle in Göbekli Tepe, right? The belt buckle is one of the most extraordinary things because it shows fashion, right? It shows art. It shows a lot of things that shouldn't be existing with Stone Age man at the end of the last modern ice age. It shows culture, and there's symbols on that belt too as well. The H is pretty interesting.
Absolutely.
What if we find something like that in Siberia? What is that going to tell you?
Well, I mean, firstly, the Denisovans were creating tailored clothing possibly as early as 40,000 to 50,000 years ago. And secondly, there were whole cultures that were creating tailored clothing with a very sophisticated society, with its own cosmologies, with its own goddess religion, even with agriculture as early as 30,000 years ago in Russia. And it was what they are known to archaeologists as the Gravatians, which is a very boring title. But a branch of those existed in Czechoslovakia, and these people were incredibly advanced. Now, I touch on this in my book, Göbekli Tepe, Genesis of the Gods, and I do suggest there that if we are looking for the origins of the founders and the builders there, we should be looking towards Russia and towards the north.
Well,
some of my contemporaries would disagree, but
that's okay. That's what we're here for, is to learn. We need to take a break right here, Andrew. Our guest tonight, Andrew Collins. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. You can go to Andrew's website. Just click on the link over at jimmychurchradio.com for andrewcollins.com. It's Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. More with Andrew right after this short break. 3 minutes, Andrew. Take a break.
Okay.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio.
Hello, I'm Kat Dealey, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, this is Ray Sobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier. And this is Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers. Well, yes. We are of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
What's up, Fadernauts? Studio Dome loves Fade to Black and the F2B audience so much that they have put together the ultimate stereo Bluetooth system. They've done it just for you. Man, check this out. The Studio Dome SBB2 stereo system is here. It's featuring 2 Studio Boombox 2 SBB2 wireless Bluetooth speakers, packed in its own custom hardshell case. This Studio Dome system features the very latest in stereo Bluetooth technology. The 2 full-range boomboxes are in true wireless stereo. You've got to hear this. It's amazing. It's just $129 and use the promo code JCRTWS and you'll also get free shipping. It's simple. Just go to JimmyChurchRadio.com, click on the Studio Dome banner. Göbekli Tepe.
Balance of Nature's fruits and veggies.
I was diagnosed with congestive heart failure. I went from being able to work 14, 16 hours a day with no problem to where I could barely walk a block to the store. I went on to the phytonutrients about 6 months ago, and within a couple of months, my medical doctor had cut my prescriptions down in a little bit smaller dosage. The next time I went back a month later, I walked into the doctor's office and he says, "My gosh, what's happened to you? You don't even look like the same person." He looked at my legs and the swelling had gone down. My blood pressure was down. The venous stasis ulcers that I had had on my legs for the last 4 or 5 years because of the poor circulation were all healed, and I'm feeling far better.
The new challenge will allow you to receive 2 months of Balance of Nature's fruits and veggies free, and we'll even ship them to you free. Call now for details. Call 1-800-246-8751 or go online to balanceofnature.com. Use promo code TALK.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black, across the globe on the Game Changer Radio Network and the one and only KGRA Radio, The Planet.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Very simple. Hashtag F2B is the sandbox in TweetDeck. Our guest tonight, Andrew Collins, live from the UK. And Andrew, you touched upon something that I want to go back and visit, which is all of these civilizations, and that includes South and Central America, as well as Göbekli Tepe and of course, Egypt, is that these cultures started off on the high side, right? And they declined. Their art declined. Their knowledge, everything went down. How do we explain that? Where did Göbekli Tepe go? You know, why the decline in Egypt and Cusco, Peru, for example, too, as well? Everything declined. Why do we have this trend?
Well, I think a lot of it is to do with motivation, whatever that motivation is. But let's deal with Göbekli Tepe. The oldest enclosures are the most sophisticated, the largest, the most technologically accomplished of all of them. They're aligned to the stars of the Cygnus constellation, and you know it's the full package. And then obviously, as we go on across the centuries, the structures get much smaller. The old ones are either decommissioned or they're robbed of their important stones to be used elsewhere, or they're smashed or whatever, until eventually, after 1,500 years, you have tiny little rooms with tiny little stones about 4 or 5 feet tall, and they look like a jacuzzi, a family jacuzzi. I mean, clearly they were places of ritual, but compared to the early huge, great structures with monoliths 18 feet tall, weighing perhaps 15, 20 tons, something has changed. And I think it's the motivation. And that motivation originally was to prevent another cataclysm occurring. They were in fear that something bad would happen again. And fear is the greatest motivator, I'm afraid, as sad as that is the truth. And here you would have been able to get together hundreds, if not thousands of people living in communities all the way around the area of Göbekli Tepe, which is in the area of Şanlıurfa in southeast Turkey, all taking part in this huge project. They would have been either stonemasons, quarrymen, artisans, tool makers, people that made the food or whatever it was. There would have been a huge communities. And in fact, structures like this probably actually helped create the agricultural revolution, because not only did you have to feed hundreds, if not thousands of people, but quite likely at 1 or 2 times a year, the public would probably have been allowed to come here as well, on huge pilgrimages. So you'd have had to have found food for them as well. And this probably got somebody thinking, well, what should we do? I know what we'll do. We experimented a while back with cereal grains. Let's bring that in again and see if we can make it work this time. And of course, this created the agricultural revolution, and it was almost like this catalyst that then sent a wave of activity going out right the way throughout Europe and throughout Asia, and obviously into northeast Africa and probably even further afield. And all of this was going on from, let's say, 9,600 BC through, I'd say, probably until around about 8,500 BC, so just over 1,000 years. But then something changes. Firstly, the orientation of the enclosures, which are still quite decent at this point. They change from looking at stars to looking at the sun and the rising of the sun.
Right.
So something's changed. Their ideologies have changed. The motivations for constructing them have suddenly changed. Now the sun has become the most important thing in the sky. Why? Because it's totally important to agriculture and the ripening of crops each year. You need the sun to return with its heat each year. So forget the stars now. We're not interested in those anymore. We're interested in the sun and to appease the sun and make sure that it rises after its period in the underworld each year. Obviously this is the foundations of religions like Adonis and Tammuz and Osiris and whatever else. But the other thing is that no cataclysms had occurred. So I think that they began to say, well, hold on, why are we actually building these things? Just remind me why we actually create these things. Hold on, and you say to keep away cataclysms. Well, we haven't had any for 1,000 years, so why should we build big ones anymore? We'll still continue on, but we'll do smaller ones. So that's it. Motivations change, ideologies change, and people get to a point where they can't be bothered really to continue traditions. Also, what happens is you get schisms. Some people want to stay with the old ways. Some people want to move to the new ways. Maybe there were star worshippers that religiously adhered to the old ways, and there are new people that just wanted to worship the sun, and that breaks the whole thing into two. So one lot goes to one place, one lot maybe stays where they were, and it all begins to fractionalize and dissolve. And come about 8,000 BC at Göbekli Tepe, for whatever reason, they decided that that's it. We're just going to cover over the remaining enclosures and get out. They probably moved to other places in the Near East, and they're also on the way now to Europe.
And can you apply that same methodology to ancient Egypt and the Old Kingdom, where obviously at 2650 BC, where they Giza is built, that everything also declined there too as well? Was it fracturing? Was it a lack of interest? Why didn't they build 20 Great Pyramids?
Well, that's a good point. And I think that the only answer, once again, is motivation. Because obviously you have these incredible constructions at Giza, which, by the way, are not isolated. I mean, there was a series of earlier structures, beginning with things like the Step Pyramid, 150 years earlier, and a gradual build-up via the other pyramids at places like Dashur, which is just to the south of Giza, and then finally Giza itself. So there is a progression here that can be seen and recognised. And then afterwards, at the end of the Fourth Dynasty, which is the end of the time frame of the kings that were associated with the creation of the Giza pyramid field, something happens. The motivations change, the family seems to change, and it seems as if another branch of the family comes in, certainly for the first couple of pharaohs, and it seems they've got different ideas. We'll still build, great monuments, but we'll go back to the old ways of creating mastaba-tombs. And this was what they were building before they started on the big pyramid projects. So for a little while, we go back to mastaba-tombs. And then another pharaoh comes along whose name is Userkef. Now, he's a direct descendant of, I think, Khafre, so he would have been the son of Khufu. And he wants to revive the whole idea of pyramids again. So he not only revives the pyramids, but also starts creating these massive, great sun temples in the desert at a place called Abu Sir, which again is just to the south of. And all of the energy starts going into the sun temples, whereas they're creating pyramids, but not so big and not so solid. Their interiors are made of mud brick. They cut corners here and there. The principles are there, but they've decided that they don't need to do that. All the efforts are now going to go into the sun temples because they're now big time into the worship of the sun god Re. And so things have changed. I mean, and it's as simple as that. We do change our ideas. We follow certain ideologies and views and things like that, and just eventually people change their ways and think, no, I don't like doing it that way. I'll do it a different way. People try and revive it. But, it's almost like the time has passed, the time is lost. It's they're on to new things. So I think that's the answer. I'm sure that you could pin it down a lot better than that. But that's general. It's motivation.
Well, okay, now I've got a direct question for you. How did they get the granite blocks from Aswan to Giza? Did they drag them across the desert, or did they have some type of massive barge system to make their way up the Nile, or down the Nile, I should say?
I tried to tackle how they built the Great Pyramid in a book called Gods of Eden. And I did it not because I was that interested, but purely because the publisher said they want that in the book.
Right.
So amongst all the other great things that were in there, I had to tackle the idea of how they built the pyramids. And I think what I concluded eventually is that we haven't got the knowledge to actually answer those questions at the moment. I mean, people like Mark Lerner, the Egyptologist, created a small pyramid in the desert close to Giza and saw that in terms of a triumph. But it was a tiny little thing, and they ended up having to use modern machinery to move things into place because they were going so slowly. So how's that fit into the scheme of the ancient Egyptians building the pyramid? And the answer is, A, we don't know, and B, somehow they did it. Now, whether it was all conventional tugging and pushing and pulling across deserts, or whether there was some kind of more advanced technology involved, perhaps, sound technology, ultrasound, all this sort of stuff. Who knows? Perhaps.
Well, I did a calculation, Andrew. Check this out. From Aswan to the Giza plateau, pushing the bricks or pulling those blocks at 2 feet every 5 minutes, right? 2 feet every 5 minutes, right? With I don't know how many guys, it would take 24 years. Right, to drag the blocks that distance. So I'm not too sure how they pull that off. And if you double the calculations, right, you can get it. And that's 24 hours a day, by the way. That's not taking a break. And if you double the distance, you can cut it down to 12 years at 24 hours a day. So the only answer to, because the Great Pyramid isn't the only pyramid that they built in this fashion. There were others too as well that take the manpower and pulling these blocks across the desert. Or they had some kind of massive boat system that we don't know about that didn't sink. Throwing a 50-ton block onto an ancient Egyptian boat would sink it.
I don't know. It's the honest answer. I mean, I'm not going to make it up if I don't know. I mean, I think most of these questions are passed by Egyptologists because we haven't got answers to them. I mean, you can theorize, you can come up with very clever engineering ideas of how it might happen, but we honestly don't know. I mean, my interest lies more with why they did them, and obviously when. It's motivation for me. Why would you create pyramids like that? And why would you make it so complicated?
Yeah,
why is there so many chambers inside? Why so many corridors?
I totally agree with you. I cannot understand or wrap my head around the motivation of convincing guys to drag blocks across the desert for 20 years. Right? I mean, what's the motivation there? There's something there that made everybody go, you know what, this is a good idea. And you have the logistics that's involved. These guys have to be fed. They have to sleep somewhere. Any military campaign involves these types of logistics. Yeah. And all of that applies to not only the Great Pyramid, but all of the pyramids. You just brought up the Step Pyramid. That's another example. There is a large group of people somewhere that was in constant production of the pyramids all the way up to the Giza Plateau.
Indeed. I haven't got the answers on that one.
I want to shift gears a little bit. Stay on Giza, though, of course.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about the Temple of the Birds, how you found that, and the cave complex that you discovered. Because, first off, it wasn't supposed to exist. You found that motivation somewhere to continue and to go back and revisit the plateau, and you somehow figured it out. But the most amazing thing is you were crazy enough to go in there. The video creeps me out. The claustrophobic side of things. You and your wife too. She deserves a medal. My wife would never do that. But to go and do that was an incredible accomplishment, but they weren't supposed to exist. You did it. What was the motivation, and why were you so focused on the Temple of the Birds?
Okay, well, let's correct you on that one. It's the Tomb of the Birds.
The Tomb of the Birds. I'm sorry.
So, I mean, the temple sounds a bit more grand, but no, it was a plain and simple sorry, you got me at it now. A tomb in the northwest corner of the Giza Plateau. It was several hundred yards away from the Great Pyramid, which was probably the closest pyramid to it. And I worked out that the shadow of the Great Pyramid, probably around the time of the equinox, would actually kiss this tomb. It would actually cover it. So you wouldn't be wrong to say that it was discovered beneath the shadow of the Great Pyramid. But anyway, how do we get onto it? Well, I suppose my first interest in this subject was Edgar Cayce back in the 1970s and the idea of a hall of records existing somewhere beneath the Giza plateau, probably somewhere in the vicinity of the Sphinx monuments. But this was really boosted in the 1980s when I worked with a psychic, and he talked about this underground complex existing at Giza, and he described it in detail. And this was a guy who could see and give names and dates of places of historical things, medieval period, things happening in England and things like that, and we would go to places and it would all check out. And I never doubted it and, just worked with this information. So the fact that he was saying that there was some kind of underground complex at Giza made me sit up and listen and think, well, maybe he's right. Maybe there really is something there to be found. And I never forgot that. And then fast forward, really, until the mid-1990s, people like John Anthony West and Robert Schoch, were promoting the idea that the Sphinx was far, far older, and that working with an engineer by the name of Thomas Tabby, they'd found underground chambers or cavities in the vicinity of the Sphinx. And by this time, I was starting to write historical books, like From the Ashes of Angels and Gods of Eden, things like this. But I never dreamt that I would actually be able to spend, quality time out in Egypt investigating these subjects myself. And all of these things I kept in mind, and I would speak to local people about, stories and legends to do with entrances. And my main focus initially was on a well and a spring just to the south of the Sphinx, which I found that there were stories about some kind of underground tunnel going from there to the Sphinx area. But then in 2004, I realised, working with an engineer called Rodney Hale, that the pyramids reflected the exact positions in the night sky of the constellation of Cygnus, the celestial bird. And I wrote all this up in a book which would eventually be published under the name The Cygnus Mystery. And this brought me into huge conflict with, my colleague Robert Bouval and the Orion Mystery followers and whatever, but that's another story. But the important thing is that the key star of Cygnus was not marked by a major monument, and this is the star Deneb, and it fell somewhere to the northwest of the pyramids. So I looked at that area very closely, thinking that there might be something of interest in that area. And it was then that my colleague Nigel Skinner Simpson brought a very old 19th century map of the Giza Plateau. And right in the area, not exactly on, but not far away, was something I'd never seen before. And this basically said Tomb of the Birds. It was it had a few more words than that, but essentially that's what it said. The tomb where the remains of birds have been found.
Was this the map of Colonel Weiss?
Yes, it was. It was actually done by John Shea Perry, who was the engineer that accompanied Howard Weiss and did all the technical stuff and recorded everything in the wake of the work that Howard Weiss did. And he left to us probably one of the most accurate maps from this period of the Giza Plateau, and that they'd mentioned this Tomb of the Birds, let's call it that. And myself and Nigel tried to find out more information, and we found that there was one diary entry of Weiss and Perrin going inside this tomb and finding the remains of birds, and in particular pulling out one extremely large bird which was mummified. And And, they talk about underground galleries. They talk about some kind of, quite extensive place. And yet this was not recorded at all. There was nowhere that recorded this tomb. And Nigel, who knew everything about the Giza Plateau, every single paper and article that had ever been published, could confidently say there's nothing published about this anywhere. So I thought, well, I wonder if there's any chance that, that this unrecorded tomb has an entrance into an underground cave system or something like that. So I went there finally in 2007. And I went into it. It was completely dark. I tried to explore it, did so. Very interesting place, but I didn't find any entrance into any underground system.
Well, let me ask you this really quick, and we're going to head to a break in 3 minutes. I want to get this part in. What were the Egyptian authorities, specifically Zahi, what were they telling you when you approached them and said, I think there's a cave system up here. I want to go check this out. Were they in total denial? Did they try to shut you down? What was that side of it?
Yes, they did. Yeah, I mean, this wasn't until after we found it, because I think if we'd have gone there beforehand, we'd have never been able to do what we did.
Right. They wouldn't
we didn't do anything illegal. We just were very canny in being able to get to that part of the plateau by hiring camels and going over there and using a method of getting to that part of which wasn't illegal. We're perfectly legal to get there, but we if you'd have tried to walk there, you'd have had problems. On camels, nobody's going to stop you. It's changed now. But anyway, coming to Zahi Hawass, when I did finally reveal that we'd gone back in 2008 and actually found the entrance to this whole cave system and got inside not once but 4 times, he was in denial. He threw his arms up in the air and he says, amateurs cannot discover anything. We know everything that there is to know about the Giza Plateau. We know all about this. There's nothing there, nothing to see. But the strange thing is that Sue, who was then my wife, no longer my wife, I must point out, at that point there was a moment of silence in the room, and she just burst out laughing. And I sort of looked at her and I just thought, is that appropriate? And then I just got it. Zahi Hawass was just saying what he had to say. It was like he knew that we'd found something. He'd seen the pictures, but his official stance had to be nothing to see, nothing to find. We know everything. But within a year, he's taken a whole television crew inside there, and they're discovering the caves for themselves.
Let's take a break right here. You gotta love Zahi. He will play the political card. He just will. Our guest tonight, Andrew Collins. When we come back, we're going to finish up with the Giza Cave Complex. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. More with Andrew right after this short break. 3 minutes, Andrew. Take a break.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRARadio.com.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Oh, fall. My favorite time of year. Cooler temperatures and, well, let's be honest, layers. Lots and lots of layers. Look, I get it. We all have that favorite hoodie. Matter of fact, I've got a few favorite hoodies. You should wear yours. Enjoy it. I do. But I stay focused on my health year-round. And for me, I take Nature's Youth RSF from nature'syouth.com. Nature's Youth RSF from nature'syouth.com. I eat right, control my portion sizes, still maintain a commitment to regular fitness, and I get plenty of rest, and I take Nature's Youth RSF. It's okay to cover up your beach body for a few months, but don't just forget about it. Nature's Youth understands exactly what it means to provide top-quality health products, and Nature's Youth customers not only improve their health, they know they're also providing their body with the right nourishment to maintain peak performance levels and fight the aging process. So layer up and get started today with Nature's Youth RSF. naturesyouth.com. Simple to use, even simpler to order. Go to naturesyouth.com. That's naturesyouth.com.
I have actually been on Balance of Nature for a year now. I have MS, and I recently had an MRI. This is the first year that I've had a stable MRI, so I'm thrilled. When I have an MRI with MS, usually there are glowing spots that come through, which is damage on the nerves in my brain and my spinal cord, and when they're glowing, it means they're active. And then my last MRI, they pulled it up, and I honestly couldn't believe that it was my MRI. There was nothing glowing. And in fact, the dark spots were shrinking. They were healing. And the doctor actually said to me, I think we're in remission. I was so happy. I had no idea that that could be my reality.
The new challenge will allow you to receive 2 months of Balance of Nature's fruits and veggies free. And we'll even ship them to you free. Call now for details. Call 1-800-246-8751 or go online to balanceofnature.com. Use promo code TALK.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Welcome back, Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Andrew Collins, live from the UK. And we're talking about the cave complex that Andrew discovered underneath Giza that started at the Tomb of the Birds. And Andrew, I want to go back to the moment because you visited the cave, you didn't find the entrance, or you visited the tomb, you didn't find the entrance. You went back. And there's a stunning moment where you look into this alcove that you had gone down and checked out before. And you went back, you took a second look, and there it was right in front of you, the entrance, which was not large, by the way. And I can understand why you didn't see it the first time. But take me to that moment when you looked into this dark hole. There it is, an entrance to something. What was going through your mind?
Well, I mean, firstly, I think from a retrospective point of view, I mean, it was almost like my Tutankhamen moment, Howard Carter looks through the hole and Lord Carnarvon says, "What can you see?" And he says, "Wonderful things." I mean, that was my wonderful things moment. Basically.
Absolutely.
Because, suddenly everything has come together. Everything. I mean, this was something like 5 years of work had brought to this point. This was not something that we stumbled across by accident. This was by design. We had followed up research, myself and my colleague Nigel Skinner Simpson, and obviously, as you mentioned, my ex-wife was there, and we all played a very important role in coming to this moment and this point. And when I looked inside, and Shona talked to the first time, that the place was really deep. I mean, and it was just full of massive, huge, great fallen boulders from the ceiling. And there was no question that this place was dangerous. And it was also clear right from the word go that it was full of bats. But there was only one thing that we could do, and that was get down in there. I mean, there's no way that you can find something like this and walk away from it.
Right.
Even if it kills you, you've got to go in and do it. So we did, and we pushed, some distance the first day, treading very, very carefully, because any one wrong move, you could have fallen down a precipice, broken a leg, or worse.
Yeah, all you guys had, and this is the incredible thing for the audience. I want them to understand. You guys had flashlights. You didn't have repelling gear and massive generators and were able to light up this thing. You guys are going into, like you said, the abyss with handheld flashlights. You guys were out of your minds.
Yeah, yes, we were, I suppose. We penetrated it for a distance on the first 2 occasions, getting further each time. And then our time was up and we had to come away from there, go back to England. And I realised almost immediately we came back that we've got to go back. We've got to go back to Egypt. And we spoke to the Edgar Cayce Foundation and we told them what we'd found. And we said, look, could you sponsor us, at least in part, to go back there? And they said, yeah, no problem. So we went back there and, we're able to do all of our work that we wanted to do. I was able to map it, to create a map, to try and take it to its furthest limit. And the furthest limit was getting to a point probably around 150 yards into it. And that doesn't sound very far, but when you're talking about going through very treacherous environment, where you, as I said, you could fall down precipices at any time. Plus, the bats can carry, potentially deadly diseases, and also the air in there was so hot and stifling that you were sweating buckets from the moment you went in there, and also we got to as far as we could go, and we eventually found this small hole, horizontal hole that and that was it. The next move was getting through there, and my ex-wife said to me, I'll go through there. I said, don't. I said, because I'd already seen that it was full of huge bugs,
spiders,
and bearing in mind that we had seen in there and identified white widow spiders that are deadly poisonous. And I've seen some pictures from some other people that went in there after us, and there were huge, great camel spiders in there as well. So I said to her, don't go any further. I said, we've gone far enough. We've got what we want. Let's go back, write everything up, do everything properly, and then we can always come back. And that was it. And obviously I regret to this day not having pushed forward, even though it would have been dangerous. I think it would have been very dangerous to have gone any further. But what we do know now, from the fact that there was a television show that actually also explored the caves, which was part of what was it called? I can't remember now. Something to do with following Zoe Hawass around. They'd had a whole episode of exploring the caves, and one of the guys there actually went through the hole. And although on camera he says that no, it doesn't go any further, he told me off camera that it does, and they just had to say that it continues on. And we suspect from radar images of the plateau that you can certainly see the presence of the cave system, that it goes all the way to the second pyramid. It goes beneath the second pyramid. It's exactly in line with the orientation of the plateau, which is northwest to southeast. And as I said, that would take you right up to the second pyramid. And there are a lot of traditions to do with the tomb of Hermes existing beneath the second pyramid. And it said that he is there with something known as the emerald tablets held against his chest, and that these contain the keys of the cosmos. And who knows, just maybe there is something like that at the end of them. I mean, we didn't find anything inside them. They're bare completely. There was certain lines on the wall that had been chiseled, and although you could see these as having been done for practical reasons, maybe lobbing off a corner or something like that, some of them were underneath overhangs and things like that. they were not purely practical. That there was something more to it than this. The only artifact I actually saw, other than, oh, by the way, the place is full of bones, probably animals that have been dragged into here by predators like, jackals of the desert and things like this. It's full of bones, and everywhere you look, there's skulls and bones, and whatever. It sounds a dreadful place, but it's obviously a very cool place as well, obviously.
Now, there's that entrance in the Tomb of the Birds. There must be, I don't think that jackals were dragging, as predators, their food through that hole in the alcove that you found. There must be something on the other end, right?
Well, okay. Yes, in theory. And the reason I say that is because you've got thousands of bats in here. And the bats were from one end to the other. And this hole seemed to be going somewhere. And what I wanted to try and do in any return project, which, by the way, never happened because of a lot of politics and a lot of changes that went on in Egypt with the whole Arab Spring and everything like this, you had new people come in that just weren't interested in this type of exploration anymore. And is that I felt that there was a second entrance. I pinpointed it. I know roughly whereabouts it is. And what I needed to do was to get to that site and basically observe the bats and just to see if bats came out at night from this location. And the last time I was there was 2009. I've not been back to Egypt since. The opportunity has not been there. And obviously I've been focused very much on my other pet subject, which is Göbekli Tepe since that time, which has had so many discoveries since then that have kept me busy. But hopefully, touch wood, and the next book, by the way, which is called Cygnus Göbekli Tepe and the Birth of Egypt, will answer so many of your questions that you won't believe it. But so there's a lot of Egypt there, and I hope to get back out to Egypt probably next year. I'd love to go earlier, but I just don't think it's going to happen.
Now, we also have this ground-penetrating radar project that's going on in King Tut's tomb, looking for Nefertiti's possible tomb behind the wall. Are you excited about that, and what do you think's going on?
Okay, well, look, yes, I'm excited from the prospect that there may well be an extra chamber in there, but so far, 2 teams have been in there, and both of them have come away and said that they can't find any trace of it. The only evidence we've got, at this point in time, is that if you look at the 3D reconstructions of the room, there is an impression on the north part of the wall that looks like a doorway. And it gives the impression that it's a sealed up doorway that's leading perhaps into another room. Now, it has been speculated that if somebody does lie in there, it's Nefertiti. And I personally think this is extremely unlikely, and I think you'll find an awful lot of Egyptologists, some of whom I am in touch with, believe that this is probably not the case. Even if there is another tomb in there, it's probably not going to be Nefertiti. One of the reasons why it's considered there is because some people believe that she actually ruled in her own right after the death of her husband Akhenaten, who's seen as Tutankhamun's father these days, although, to be honest, he's probably more likely to be a half-brother more than anything else. So we'll have to wait and see. Another team is going in there now. I hope they do find something. I really honestly do. But it's not looking good. It's not going to be a case of 2 out of 3. It will be 1 out of 3, I'm afraid, even if they do find something. So whether that will then persuade the Egyptian authorities to start drilling holes in walls or whatever. I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see.
And also on the same subject, we have the ongoing project with the Great Pyramid and looking for more structures and rooms on the inside of the Great Pyramid. Do you think there's more to be discovered there?
Yeah, I think that we will find some more chambers. But I mean, I don't think that they're necessarily going to be highly significant. I mean, there might be something of interest within them, or they might be sounding chambers. I mean, they might be just part of the interior architecture. I think that we understand the internal architecture better than ever before now, relating to the ancient Egyptian death journey. Which is very similar to the layout of many other of the pyramids, particularly those at Saqqara and Abu Sir, which were built in the centuries immediately following that. And this makes it clear that the idea was for these to be used as chambers where the pharaohs would rest in death and their spirit would rise, journey towards the north, towards the circumpolar stars, being almost like shot out of a cannon towards the northern part of the sky, which is where the entrance corridor is pointing towards. And again, this is something that I go into in great detail in the new book, trying to explain that the ancient Egyptians saw the northern part of the sky as the place of death and the place of the afterlife. They saw the south as the place of life, because that was the direction from which the Nile came. And obviously the Nile flowed through Egypt and flowed away towards the north, i.e. towards its end point. And this was seen as the place of death and afterlife and whatever. And, there's a lot about it that's very familiar from other pyramid structures. And the more that's discovered about the manufacturers of the pyramids at Giza, the more we're beginning to get a clearer view of their true purpose. And although they may have been intended as tombs, I think that the term tomb understates it completely. I mean, if you called them ascension machines, that would be a much better way of describing them, because that's what they are. I mean, the idea was to literally project the soul into the sky world, to ascend from this world into the next. Now, whether they were actually used for that, that's a bigger debate. Clearly, we've not found any actual human remains inside them that can be dated, that can be examined, can be confirmed to be from the Pyramid Age, even though the ancient accounts do tell us that human remains were found in them during the Arab times. For instance, when the Great Pyramid was first penetrated by the work crews of the Caliph Al-Mamun, I think in 800 and something or other AD, they did actually come across a body buried inside what is quite clearly the king's chamber. They got it out. It was in a coffin. The coffin was on display for about 150 years afterwards. The problem is that we don't know whether that was contemporary. The chances are it was, because how the hell would they have got it into that room in the first place? Because Al-Mamun's men had to burrow their way through into the main part of the infrastructure of the pyramid to get to that in the first place. So it does suggest that there was a burial in the Great Pyramid.
The king's list, the pharaoh's list, the 76 cartouches that we use now today for all of the dynastic periods going back to 1. Well, now there's a 0, but going back to 1, going back to Mene, that timeline is what we base everything on. Do you think that that's an accurate description of going back to 3000 BC, or could that calendar be off? Could that stretch back to 5000, 6000, 7000 BC and just be off?
I think it's probably quite accurate, to be honest. I mean, it's fixed by certain astronomical events, like the first appearance of Sirius at a certain point in the calendar year for certain dates. This can give us very specific marker points during it. For instance, there's one, I think something like 1321 BC. There's another one that would suggest an earlier one about 2781 BC. And we certainly know that there's another cycle. These are the so-called Sothic cycles or Phoenix cycles. The correct term is a canocular cycle. And these can give us very accurate fixed points. And we've known about these since certainly the early part of the 19th century. And although some people have disputed them and tried to pull it in other directions, tried to change the dates, tried to suggest that these Sothic cycle markers relate to different events or whatever, I think that we've pretty well got it sewn up, really. The archaeology of Egypt fits pretty well with the archaeology of the Near East, of the Levant, Mesopotamia, Anatolia. So I don't think, I mean, if anything, it's no more than 50 years. That's what I would say. Coming back to the Pyramid Age, I think it's important to point out that carbon-14 dating has been done on wood from the Great Pyramid on at least 2 occasions. And on both occasions, they've given dates between around 2500 to 3000 BC, which is interesting. I mean, some of them did cluster around 2800, 2900 BC. And that would tend to suggest there's a possibility that some part of the Great Pyramid could be older, or that the wood that they used had some age to it when it was put in place. But that's only a few hundred years, it's not anymore.
Well, that's interesting, because if we do stretch it back 300 years, well, then everything else behind it gets pushed back, right? 300 years.
It would do, but the only problem with this is that no further work has been done in this area. And as I said, these other fixed markers that tell us that specific things happened on specific dates work pretty well for the construction of the Great Pyramid, probably around 2550 BC. The astronomical alignments work perfectly for there as well, to do with the air shafts towards the different stars, and other work which I've done myself to do with, the placement of the 3 pyramids and their connection with the stars of Cygnus. So all of it works pretty well. But I think that if somebody pushed it back and said, look, it's another 100 years older than what we thought, we'd have to just accept that and work around it, But I don't think it's much more than that.
But that brings up, and I'm watching Twitter here, the Great Sphinx. That is perplexing for all of us. Okay, well, let me start there. How old do you think the Sphinx is?
I think in its current format, or form, I should say, it's probably around the time of Khufu. I think that it was constructed at that time, or certainly put into its final form. It may well have existed as an animal, probably a lion, prior to this time, but how long it was there, I don't know. A colleague of mine by the name of Colin Reeder did some good work trying to give a chronology of all of the different monuments around the Sphinx. And he came to the conclusion that it probably was constructed around 2850 BC during the so-called Second Dynasty. And, we had discussions, and the most likely pharaoh who would have been involved in projects like this was a guy called Nebra, and he is noted of having, kick-started a number of different cults during his reign. But having said that, I believe that the actual Sphinx knoll, that's the natural outcrop from which the whole thing was created,
right, was
being venerated, and this is not in dispute, as much as 1,000 years before the Pyramid Age. The work of a Egyptologist or a prehistorian, I should say, working in the field of Egyptology by the name of Serena Love has done some incredible work in this area. And again, this is something that I bring out in the new book. And I think this is really important because if the Giza Plateau was a virtual blank canvas when the pyramid builders came along, here, right in the middle of the pyramid field, or I should say, I don't say right in the middle, I should say on the eastern edge, was something that was already being revered. And it was probably a simulacra, a likeness of something. Now, whether that was a human form, some kind of zoomorphic animal form.
You mean a natural? Are you suggesting a natural formation in the limestone?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's no question that this would have been very prominent on the pyramid field. It would have stuck up like a sore thumb, and almost certainly that was being venerated 1,000 years before the Pyramid Age, and arguably much earlier still. And what I have determined, working with the engineer Rodney Hale, is that there were two things that were used for the original surveying part of the field. And one was the Sphinx knoll itself, and the other was the so-called Southern Hill, just to the south of the pyramids, which is a very prominent knoll known as Göbekli Tepe. And these two were used in association with each other to create the entire underlying geometry of the field on which the three pyramids were placed. And some of that's already been published, and you can see that if you come on to andrewcollins.com, there's some links there. But we take this to a new level in the new book, and you'll be stunned by some of the stuff that we found. I mean, it is stunning to see how simple the underlying geometry is of Giza, and you can create the positions of every single pyramid, and of course, obviously, the Sphinx and Göbekli Tepe in just 9 moves.
When you're standing, and your videos are incredible with this, when you're standing on Ghibli and you're standing on the hill looking over the plateau, whoever started to lay it out obviously was standing on the apex of that hill.
Absolutely, no question about that whatsoever. I mean, it was also where the Giza Plateau Mapping Project started their survey. That was their datum point,
right?
When they started
how you
in
found the tomb
the 1980s, and they went around the entire plateau and back to that point, and they mapped the whole thing within just a few inches of error. Incredible stuff.
Yeah, and we're going to take a break right here, but also it's how you started to zero in on the Tomb of the Birds, too, as well.
That's right.
Yeah, I found that very interesting. Now, when we come back, we're going to take a break right here. When we come back, I want to talk about Tabby Star KIC 846-2852. Since its original press releases last year, I've been covering this extensively, and you've got a very interesting take on all of this. So we'll talk about the Kepler Space Telescope when we come back. Are you cool with that?
Yeah.
Let me fire up some commercials here. That's how we do it. This is live from the UK. Andrew Collins. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. 3 minutes, Andrew. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Hi everybody, this is Rob Halford, the Metal Guard on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
KGRA Radio. Intelligent talk.
PatriotPrepared.com carries the leading brands of storable food from Numana, Legacy, and Heaven's Harvest. Patriot Prepared. Our name says it all. We're dedicated to empowering you to be self-reliant and confident in any circumstance. Whether you want to be prepared in the event of an emergency or you're an outdoor sports enthusiast, PatriotPrepared.com has prepackaged meals and kits for your entire family. Legacy, Heaven's Harvest, and Numana are known for high-quality, great-tasting, GMO-free, nutritious food with no chemical preservatives. Simple to prepare, easy to store, gluten-free and organic high-quality nutrition options with a 25-year shelf life. You can't beat the feeling of being food secure when you need it most. So go to PatriotPrepared.com right now to pick up your supply of high-quality storable food for your family, because it makes good sense to be prepared. That's PatriotPrepared.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Would you like relief from muscle pain, headaches, and discomfort to sleep better, have more energy during the day, and just feel naturally amazing? Fibromalic can help. Its blend of malic acid and magnesium can provide pain relief and comfort for those who experience fibromyalgia. It helps your body absorb more oxygen, and it works quickly for a significant reduction in pain within 48 hours, all without a prescription. Ask for Fibromalic at health and vitamin shops or shop fibromalic.com.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of Fade to Black by just calling 605-562-4482. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Just call 605-562-4482. You can listen to me, Jimmy Church, on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Göbekli Tepe.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why fade to black? Because you never got that pony, damn
it. This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Andrew Collins' website is andrewcollins.com. Just go to the website right there underneath Andrew's bio, and you can click on it, and it'll take you straight over there. Great stuff. Andrew, a couple of things really quick I want to address. Number one, thank you for coming on the show tonight. But number two, our audience plays a drinking game. Every time we say Göbekli Tepe on this show, they take a drink. And I'm telling you, by the end of the broadcast tonight, I think everybody's going to be a little bit snookered. So just for the audience and for me, say Göbekli Tepe one more time.
Göbekli Tepe.
Nobody says it better than you, Andrew. Nobody. I wanted to ask you this before we move on. I don't know if you're a biblical scholar, but there's one thing that's interesting for me here. We had Michael Cremo on the show last night, and I asked him the same question. I'm going to ask you right now. Why is it that two phenomenon happen at the same time? Number one, the pyramids are not mentioned in the Bible, and I find that interesting. And on the flip side, in all of the Egyptian historical record, there's no mention of Moses or the Exodus or the plagues or everything that came back from Moses. You know, these two significant stories in history are not mentioned in either's text or historical record. Why do you think that is?
Okay, that's interesting. Two different areas, two different angles here. Well, firstly, the reason why there's not a lot about Egypt in the Bible is a very simple one. It's that the Jews, the Israelites, the different tribes hated the Egyptians. I mean, quite clearly, the way that they are portrayed, the way that Pharaoh and the rest of it is these, megalomaniac kings who wanted to do nothing but smite and destroy the Israelites. And you've got people like Moses rising out of this to save the day, to save the Israelite peoples, take them to the promised land and allow them to establish Israel. So that's the main reason. In other words, it could well be that there was other material in the Old Testament relating to Egypt that was just removed at some point because nobody liked the Egyptians. Essentially, I think that's one possible solution. Coming the other way from Egypt, as far as the Bible is concerned, well. Okay, well, firstly, you've got to define when the Exodus was. Currently, it's believed that it was way back around 1600 BC when the so-called Hyksos shepherd king peoples came into Egypt and stayed around for a while and were eventually kicked out by the first king of the New Kingdom period, the 18th dynasty, around 1575 BC. But there's no evidence of that, really. What we do have, though, is evidence of a massive cataclysm in the Mediterranean, when that's Santorini. And this is something which would have caused lots of devastation, and it would have been felt a lot in Egypt. This is something which almost certainly influenced the construction of the story of the Exodus, from the plagues of this, that, and the other, to everything. I mean, a colleague of mine by the name of Graham Phillips did a whole book associating the Exodus story and all of the different plagues with the effects of the Santorini conspiracy. And I can't remember what the name of the book was now. It was probably something like the Tutankhamen conspiracy or something.
I think that's what it was. Yes.
Oh, no, I know what it was. It was Act of God.
Act of God.
Yeah, it's a great book. Very, very good. I would advise listeners to check that out if they can. But the other thing is that I think that there was probably more than one Moses. I think that the character that we have in the Old Testament is probably a composite of 2, 3, maybe even more characters that played some role in the foundation of Israel. And I still believe, as I know Graham Phillips does believe as well, he's written about this, and various other of my colleagues does, Ahmed Osman, for instance, an Egyptian writer, that there is a relationship between the so-called Amarna period, the time of Tutankhamen and of his father, Akhenaten and Nefertiti, and the establishment of Israel, the Exodus events, all the rest of it. There is too many similarities, not only in names, but also in the type of worship that was adopted by the Israelites at this time, which was obviously, this omnipotent God without a face. With its own prayers and hymns and the rest of it, which match almost exactly the prayers and hymns to the Atum, which was the sole feature of the Arman faith, which was essentially the light of the sun, ultimately, personified as an omnipotent God. And I think there's a relationship. I strongly do. I mean, Sigmund Freud did a whole book on this subject. Moses, I can't remember the name of it now, but he pointed a load of this stuff out probably in about the 1940s. I stick with that, and I stick with there is a relationship between the Amarna period and the Exodus story, even though there are elements of it that are all over the place.
I think your camera has moved just slightly. If you can move it down just a little bit, can you do that?
Was that my mic?
No, your camera. I think your camera's moved just or sit up. Okay. Yeah, there you go. Now we got you back. Okay. The Kepler Space Telescope and KIC 846-2852, pretty significant press releases to come out of the scientific community talking about alien megastructures. I don't know if they put the cart before the horse. And I know you know what I'm referring to. It was pretty dramatic for them to jump on this possibility of a Dyson sphere or an alien megastructure. But the evidence is clearly there for something that is going on. And this is something that you're talking about now, and you'll be speaking about this at Contact in the Desert coming up this May. What do you think is going on with Tabby's star?
Well, it's... I first got to know about it, I think, in October 2015 with the rest of the world, when suddenly there was a news release, science bulletin that went out around the world saying that the Kepler Space Telescope, now this is a observational platform that was put in space to examine a certain area of the sky which serendipitously was looking towards the constellation of Cygnus and the area just to the east of that, as we look at it, in the area of the constellation of Lyra, which is where you find the bright star Vega. It was looking in this area of the sky because that's where they'd chosen to focus the cameras. For Earth-like planets, Earth-like exoplanets. And the data would come in and be processed, and they'd assess whether the light was dipping, which would suggest the presence of some kind of exoplanet. And with that information, they could predict what its size, whether it was, oxygen, water, Jupiter-like planet, whatever. Anyway, back as early as it began, probably as early as, I think, 2010 to 2011, amongst the data that was coming in was information relating to a star, which was KIC 8462852. And, just another number in the system. But what was noticed, and this was not noticed by the computers that had been set up to flag up any possible exoplanets, but had actually been done by a group of amateur astronomers that were brought in to examine the data to try and use, eyeball detection to find anything of interest. What they noticed was that in 2011, and then again, 2 years later in 2013, there had been massive dips of light coming from this particular star. In the first instance, it was a series of events that dipped the light up to about 15%. And then in 2013, another similar event dipped the light down to about 22%. Now, what that means is that, if 100% is all the light that we see coming from it, something was getting in the way,
right? That
was dipping that light by anything by 22% on the second occasion and 15% on the first occasion. Now, there were various other minor similar incidents in between, but compared with these, they were nothing, basically. So the astronomers started looking at this data, headed by a team under the leadership of Tabitha Boyajian. I think she's a University of, oh God, I've forgotten at the moment. I'll come back to me. And she was the person that was sort of put in charge of making sense of all this data and perhaps trying to write it up for a scientific journal. And they looked at it and they basically said, look, something weird is definitely going on here. Our best shot is that it is a whole flock of comets that are somehow passing in front of the star and causing these light dips, and then they sort of go out of view, and they're going to come round again, and they do 2 years later, and now in slightly different positions and whatever, and that may explain it. Now, that would probably have been the end of the story, and in fact, it made New Scientist magazine. There was a little article about it there. If it weren't for the fact that another scientist by the name of Jason Wright of, I think it's a University of Pennsylvania, I believe, looked at this data, and he had been working out how we could detect the possibility of alien megastructures existing out there in the galaxy. And one of the things that had been predicted by an earlier scientist was massive dips in light that are seen in association with stars. Now, this could be some kind of megastructure that's taking the energy from the star and using it elsewhere, maybe to power computers or fly aircraft or flying saucers or whatever you want to use that energy for. But there was a slight problem, and the problem was that if that happens, then it would create an infrared effect, because you can't absorb a whole load of energy without it creating a certain amount of heat. And that heat is gradually released in the form of infrared radiation. This is why we use thermal cameras and stuff like this. You'd see it.
Right.
And yet this was as cold as ice, basically. There was nothing coming off of this. So this was a mystery in its own right. If this was some kind of megastructure or something absorbing energy from the starlight, then we would know about it. So there was a certain amount of bone of contentions, but this information hit the headlines. And of course, with now in October 2015, has an alien megastructure been found in the Cygnus constellation? And of course, my eyes pop out of my head and I'm jumping up and down thinking, oh my God, because I had actually predicted that the Cygnus constellation was probably one of the best places to look for alien life, for the simple reason that there's good evidence that one of the strongest sources of cosmic rays in the galaxy that may well have affected human evolution on Earth was out there, and that anything in the path between there and here may well have been dosed in this cosmic radiation even earlier than us, so that it may well have evolved civilizations at a much earlier date than Earth, so that maybe we should be looking in the Cygnus constellation. I mean, I talked about this sort of stuff in my book, The Cygnus Mystery, and other follow-up articles in lectures. I've talked about it. So it was already out there. From that point onwards, there's been an awful lot written and said about this star. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good. At the moment, it's not so good because what was always going to happen here is that some clever astronomer was going to come along and put all the pieces together and come up with some mundane explanation of what was going on. And the current most trendy explanation is, the star is going through some kind of cosmic burp because it swallowed a planet, a long time ago, and it heated up, and now it's sort of going back to its former state, and it's just gone burp, and that's basically what you've seen a couple of times. Don't worry about it. All is okay up there. That's the currently believed theory. Now, is it an alien megastructure? Well, I certainly don't know, but I have written about it. I follow the different posts relating to this on the site called Reddit, REDDIT, that discusses scientific things relating to, astronomy and different science, whatever. And I think people just live in hope that this is the real thing, and that it could be aliens. But what's more important about this story is not so much actually finding the aliens, it's the fact that science, for the first time ever, is openly debating this subject as if it's cool, as if it's okay, as if it's all right to talk about alien megastructures in the sky.
Right.
And that's important. That's a change in consciousness that's, in universal consciousness, popular consciousness, and that can only help us to identify, alien civilizations, extraterrestrial intelligences out there. And we're not just talking here about tiny microbes, which is what's been chatted about before. We're talking now about, really advanced, highly advanced civilizations that can create megastructures. So that's the cool thing about this, and anything else has got to be a bonus.
Well, the bonus is Cygnus. I mean, out of
for me, that's a great bonus.
Yeah, right. Out of all of the points in the sky, in the universe, where this type of discussion is taking place, it's Cygnus. And that is way beyond coincidence, certainly when we're talking about Andrew Collins. But for all of the other civilizations on planet Earth that have been dealing with Cygnus in a very direct fashion, here we have this discovery, and I think that is the most interesting part.
Well, but it doesn't end there with Cygnus, because I don't know if you've heard, but in 2022 there's going to be a new star in the sky. The astronomers have been able to predict for the very first time the appearance of a nova. Which will actually be two stars colliding with each other. They're gradually getting closer and closer. They predicted that this will take place then. And for a period of several months in 2022, the brightest star in the sky will be in the Cygnus constellation, this new star. Now, although we can explain this and it's a natural phenomena, what's so important here is that the appearance of these so-called guest stars or novas in the past have changed history. And in 1600, for instance, new star appeared in the constellation of Cygnus. Cygnus at this time was being seen as the place of inspiration of the liberal arts, Shakespeare and the theatre and writing and science and mathematics and astronomy. That changed our mindset when it appeared in the year 1600. And it's even shown within various woodcuts that were done by the so-called Rosicrucians at the beginning of the 17th century. And of course, what did all this lead to? The Age of Enlightenment, the Royal Society, Isaac Newton, everything that we have today, because they saw the appearance of that star as beginning a new age of enlightenment. And already I noticed that various rabbis and other people are saying that this new star that will appear in the constellation of Cygnus in 2022 will basically, I don't know whether you want to see it as the second coming or Armageddon or, apocalypse or just the beginning of a new age.
Is it going to be another 2012 hysteria all over again?
Well, it's 10 years after, isn't it? It's 10 years after 2012. It's going to be connected. People are already doing it.
Right.
And I mean, when I get a moment, I probably will write about it. I know my colleague Graham Phillips has already done an article about this new star and showing the impact of the one from 1600. And I think you'll find, I mean, at the moment, I think people are cautious because, they're not sure if it's really going to happen. I mean, not enough information is known, but as we get closer and the information is released into the public domain, I think that more people will get excited about this. And from my point of view, because Cygnus is my favourite constellation for many, many different reasons, I'm only happy that this is happening. Although hopefully Armageddon won't begin.
You're right. Well, and this is the other interesting part, because when I first heard about the 2022 nova appearance, and the references going back to 1600, which now are being talked about, these temporary stars, right? What about the tie-ins with ancient histories? The Star of Bethlehem, the North Star. We've always tried to figure out exactly what, is being referenced here. Could that have been a temporary nova? And,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, in fact, if you look online and you put Cygnus X1, Star of Bethlehem, there is actually theories, I mean, whether they're right or wrong, it's pure speculation, that this was the supernova that created Cygnus X1, which is the black hole that was the first ever black hole discovered. It was the one that Stephen Hawking had a bet with one of his colleagues about whether it was or wasn't a black hole, and he lost the bet, and of course it is a black hole. And I mean, that also could have been in the Cygnus constellation. And I think that this is a likely location for a number of these novas, or guest stars as they're known in Eastern Asia, over a very long period of time, probably going all the way back to the Paleolithic Age. I'm not saying that it's the only place where they occurred, but the reason why they occur there is because there's such a thick cluster of stars right on the rim of the Milky Way, because that's the other important thing about Cygnus. It sits right on the centre of the Milky Way, where it splits
the rift,
what's known as the Great Rift, or the Dark Rift.
Right.
Which has always been seen by ancient cultures as a point of entry and exit to the sky world.
Now, and I want to thank you before we close out here. Great conversation tonight. If you were going to, I know that you have, but if you were going to push all of your chips in the middle of the table and make that bet, alien contact, do you think it most likely will come from Cygnus?
That would be nice, wouldn't it? I don't know, is the honest answer. But I think what's important about the KIC 846285 star, or Tabby star as it's more popularly known, or the Boyajian star as the scientists like to call it now, is that it's allowing us to focus on that area of the sky. And if there really is an ET intelligence out there, they'll use this to their advantage. Because I believe in quantum entanglement and the fact that the past and the present and the future are all interlinked on a subatomic quantum level, it could well be that we are actually engineering the fact that that is where eventually we will make contact with ET intelligences. In other words, if alien civilizations or extraterrestrial intelligences exist out there, they could have a different concept of time. In other words, they can manipulate the past to make things happen in the future, or the present, or whatever. In other words, if the more we keep looking at that area of the sky, the more likely it will be that we will find something, because everything will be engineered to that eventuality. I believe that could be possible.
Thank you. It's absolutely been an amazing conversation. I can't wait to see you stateside here. It's just only a month and a half away. I can't believe it. May's coming up. We're in the first week of March. April, May, you're going to be here. And I'm very excited about that, to see you out of contact in the desert. Andrew, don't change. Keep doing what you're doing. I'm going to say that we were talking about this earlier this week. We just all need to get along. We all need to listen to each other, and you're a big piece to that puzzle. Thank you so much.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Andrew Collins, everybody. Thank you, Andrew. I'm going to take a break right here. This is Fade to Black, and this is the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, and I'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us.
and you are listening to my boy, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
Does your basement or crawl space have a damp, musty smell? Well, watch out! That's a sign of too much moisture and not enough ventilation. And that can mean increased mold growth and the buildup of harmful toxins and gases. Don't bother with a dehumidifier. It just circulates the same unhealthy air. Now there's a better way to remove these dangers and odors. It's with the computerized Wave Moisture Control Unit that reduces moisture and expels pollutants.
We replaced our old dehumidifier with the Wave unit, and in only 3 weeks, our basement is dry and the musty smell is gone.
Wave units require no maintenance, no buckets of water or filters, and costs only pennies a day to run. Breathe better, live healthier with an affordable, no-maintenance Wave unit. Call 888-618-WAVE, 888-618-WAVE, or visit mydryhome.com. mydryhome.com.
Ride the wave. Wave Home Solutions for a healthy, comfortable home.
What's up, Fadernauts? Studio Dome loves Fade to Black and the F2B audience so much that they have put together the ultimate stereo Bluetooth system. They've done it just for you. Man, check this out. The Studio Dome SBB2 stereo system is here. It's featuring 2 Studio Boombox 2 SBB2 wireless Bluetooth speakers, packed in its own custom hardshell case. This Studio Dome system features the very latest in stereo Bluetooth technology. The 2 full-range boomboxes are in true wireless stereo. You've got to hear this. It's amazing. It's just $129, and use the promo code JCRTWS, and you'll also get free shipping. It's simple. Just go to jimmychurchradio.com, click on the Studio Dome banner. Göbekli Tepe.
Erica, Brittany, Gabby, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRARadio.com.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. Thank you, Andrew Collins. Dude is smart. I got to tell you, hanging out in Twitter, trying to keep up with you guys is insane, and I am impressed. That's it. That's all there is to it. I am retweeting Rick Knight's shot of this Nismo. That's pretty cool. Jimmy Church Radio on the side of it. Dare I say our own racing car? Pretty cool. Man, like the that's pretty impressive. I just retweeted it. If you want to check those pictures out, just go to hashtag F2B. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. And Rick, I just posted those over on Facebook. It's very, very, very cool. Andrew Collins. All right, I want to jump back. Oh, also, I was talking about Bryan Cranston. It's his birthday today at the beginning of the show. The series that I was talking about that we just binged was called Sneaky Pete. And if you haven't checked it out, check it out. It's a really good series. And I've heard that they're going to do a season 2, so check it out. All right. Anyway, so back to Andrew and the conversation and what I took away from it. There's a couple of interesting points, even for someone like Andrew, who has done nothing but study Giza, Egypt. He discovered the cave complex underneath the Giza plateau that wasn't supposed to exist. Man has done it all. But I am serious about this. We did some calculations. And Rita and I, as we do, every single night, we discussed Egypt and, what's going on there. And she
brought up the distance from Aswan up to the Giza Plateau. And depending on how you measure it, if you measure it right along the Nile and you take the long route, it's about 500 miles. If you do it by how the crow flies, you're looking at about 350 to 400 miles. It's a long ways either way. And if you think about it, it's like from here to Portland, right? Or from Los Angeles to I don't know, Roswell, right? 500 miles is a long, long way. And for someone, when you're dealing with 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70-ton blocks of red granite, dragging that through the desert at let's be conservative here. Let's go easy. Let's say 2 feet every 5 minutes, right? Pushing and pulling. 24 hours a day, you're looking at, 24 years. 24 hours a day. If you double the distance and you start to play with the numbers and you can cut that time in half, 24 hours a day down to 12 years. 12 years. Now, when you start to apply that to the 20-year construction period that Egyptologists will tell you took to build the Great Pyramid, wait a minute. There's another 12 to 20 years of pushing the stuff through the sand. Where is it, and I'm adamant about this. The design of the Grand Gallery, the Queen's Chamber, the King's Chamber, the red granite, how it fits together so perfectly. It's been running the ground over the years. You can't stick your credit card in there. You can't put a razor blade in between the joints. I get all of that, right? Okay, I get it. But we're talking about a design that apparently wasn't done with a drawing table, T-squares, a drafting machine. Certainly there wasn't a computer-aided design involved. So the design of all of this, somebody was on site. They dragged these blocks through the desert for 12 years, 20 years, 18 years. The construction of the pyramid is allegedly going on at the same time. And these blocks are then brought to the Great Pyramid and brought up 20 stories in the air, 200 feet up, red granite blocks. I know this has been discussed a lot, but you need to understand that somebody was up there and then designing these blocks there to fit perfectly like that. I just don't get it. Now, Andrew's pretty adamant about it being Khufu and being built at 2650 BC. I am not. And I listen to Andrew. He's an important guy to listen to. I listen to his knowledge. And once again, we push all of this into the center of the table and let's look at it and discuss it. But for me, I can't get that through my head. I just can't. The 20-year period, none of it makes any sense. And how Egypt, and again, running this in the ground, how Egypt goes from Mene at 3100 BC, 3000 BC, 350 years later, from a nomadic tribe in the middle of the desert, Upper and Lower Egypt merge, and suddenly cities arise, and knowledge is there. Suddenly everything is working. Everything is working. Math, astrology, astronomy, agriculture, government, religion, right? The ability to build the pyramids at the very beginning of, we're talking about the 4th dynasty. This is the beginning of Egypt. And I have problems with that. It just doesn't make any sense. It would make more sense to me. It would be something that I could digest if the pyramids were built 300 BC, 3,000 years later. We can kind of get our head around that. Paper and Greek math and what the Romans were doing. Things started to develop, but 3,000 years before that, 2,500 years before that, where did this knowledge come from? That is my point. Where did the knowledge come from? When we really, really dig deep here, and we look at the 25 large pyramids that were built in and around Giza and south of Giza, from the Step Pyramid, the Red Pyramid, and so forth. When we look at those pyramids, the same thing is involved there, right? Rita just tweeted out, but no wheel. Exactly. The same amount of work is involved. You know, the Red Pyramid is huge. It's the same amount of rocks that are cut, blocks that are cut. It's the same thing on the Giza Plateau, right? So where's this population coming from, right? They must have had a constant stream of red granite blocks coming out of Aswan up through the desert, a non-ending bumper-to-bumper traffic jam of blocks, because this period was only 100 years, 150 years of the pyramid construction of the big stuff, right? And if they're taking 20 years each, start to do the math. It doesn't add up. And for me, I'm just smarter than that. I can't get my head around it. And Rita, she's so how do I want to say this? Cannot get her mind off of the wheel. And I agree with her, right? Because what the Egyptologists are trying to make us digest and swallow is the fact that they did this without the wheel, that they did this with wood, with copper chisels, ropes, and stone hammers, round ball stone hammers. No. The answer is no. They didn't do it. You got to come up with something better, you know? And if the wheel was involved, if you can kind of, I don't know how they get that through the sand, but they did this without any of that modern technology, allegedly. And that's the part that I just don't buy. I cannot do it. I think that my mind is firmly made up that they inherited the pyramids. They did. One of the points that Andrew brought up with me earlier this week off the air was the pyramid papyrus that were discovered in 2013, and they are the oldest in Egypt. And in part of this, it is written about some of the construction. One of the guys that was involved, he was the leader of a group, of a crew that was quarrying the limestone blocks and bringing them over to the pyramid. And it's just like, hey, that's proof. I read that, and I have read it over and over again, the pyramid papyrus, which is this. All that says to me is that they were doing stuff to the Great Pyramid. Maybe they were repairing it. Maybe they were replacing the blocks. Maybe they were modifying it. But it doesn't say that they built them. And with those papyrus, where is the plans, the design? Where is all of that? Where's the engineering record? You know, they've got everything else in life, right, that is recorded, but they don't have that, the most important monuments, not only in Egypt, but maybe the world. And I just have issues with this. I do. You know, I have not had anybody convincingly tell me how it got done. And just like Andrew said tonight, and I love Andrew, he is so smart, but he said it tonight, I don't know how they built them. I don't. You know, and I'm just not buying into it. I'm not. The whole Khufu, fourth dynasty, nah, didn't happen. Didn't happen that way. And that's me. All right. Wow, what a great conversation. Feels good to be yapping, by the way. A couple of things that I want to get out of the way. You know what? I'll open up the phone lines. I forgot to say that at the beginning. I'll open up the phone lines. What did you think about that conversation with Andrew Collins, 323-825-5045. And there you go. All right. Let's see here. Oh, wow. That didn't take but a second. I clicked, and there you go. All right. I'll just go live right now. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black.
Jimmy.
Yes.
Oh, this is Lance in Mammoth.
Hey, Lance and Mammoth, how are you, man? Turn me down in the background, Lance.
Yep, I'm turning you down.
Okay.
Okay. No, I was just going to throw out some information about quarrying those rocks and stuff like that.
What have you got?
Well, let's just say the Anunnaki, the real early Anunnaki, maybe, prior 52,000 years ago, which is 2 grand cycles. They have all sorts of technology. But one of the things I heard from my friend who's into ORMUS, orbitally rearranged monatomic elements, which is something that I haven't heard you cover yet on your show.
Oh, we've done it. We've done it many, many times. But continue, Lance.
Okay. Anyway, I must have missed all those. Anyway, if you take ORMUS, like iridium ORMUS or gold ORMUS,
right,
or whatever, and you actually can turn it into a paste and smear it on something. And I think there's some pictures of this somewhere, or depicted somewhere. But actually, you smear it on, let's just say, a big giant quarried stone, which they can quarry with sonic, lasers, and you all you have to do is heat it up to like 800, 850 degrees via either regular heat or with sound that can
vibrate it to heat. Sure.
Present itself up to the same frequency as a flame.
Right.
And it would just change the ORMUS, and it would change the field of the whole ORMUS coating around this block, and just make it totally, gravitationally inert. And, it just would float, and they just literally just pushed them along. And that's, one of the ways that I hear that they were moved around.
Yeah, it had to have been something. I can tell you what it wasn't. They weren't rolling it, they weren't rolling it along logs, right? No trees. And can you imagine?
That's so old school thought. I mean, it's not even worth talking about it anymore.
No, it's not. It's not. And I'll tell you another reason why. When you start to look at, I like to do the math, Lance. So when you do the math at 2.5 million blocks, how many pieces of wood are we dealing with to build the Great Pyramid? We're talking about a forest worth of trees. Now, that's just for one pyramid. What about Khafre's pyramid, which is right next to it, or Menkare's pyramid, which is next to that? Those are forests full of trees to build these pyramids. And where's all that wood? I'll give you another example, Lance. Trip on this. This is how twisted my mind is. But it's called do the math. So if you have 2.5 million blocks, that means you have how many millions of man hours, right? So how many man hours per block to move them from the quarry to the pyramid? I don't know, a day, 2 days? How long does it take to lift, right? Well, but let's back up.
According to the methods that, you are espousing, yeah. I mean, but hold on. They were all levitated. They were all laser cut.
Sure.
Sonic sound, and they were all levitated. And the ORMUS factor, I've watched ORMUS in action. It's stuff that you can actually sit out in the sunlight and it'll, float away and or just disappear into the next dimension.
And Lance, hold on, Lance. I'm with you on this, right? So let's stay with what you're saying. Each block had to get cut. Each block had to get moved, right? Okay, ORMUS. They're bathing it in ORMUS. Somebody has to do that, and that person that is doing that has to do what? He has to eat. He has to eat a meal or 2 or 3 per block. Now, somewhere around the Great Pyramid is, if there's 2.5 million blocks, and let's say there's 8 meals tied in with each one for each guy then that means there's 20 million fish heads somewhere
That's if you're eating fish heads.
Right. Do you understand? The pigs. There's 10 million pig heads somewhere. I don't get it.
The Anunnaki, who earlier Anunnaki, they didn't have to eat that much. They could actually convert sunlight into energy and all this other type of stuff. And they were actually really quite huge at that time.
Right.
And with the technology they had, it was just, simple as us cutting butter with a butter knife, a hot butter knife, to quarry this stuff. And the Ormus, which they had developed a long time ago, and that was one of the reasons the pyramid was built, was to actually make Ormus, amongst all the other things that it did, besides being a transmitter and a antenna and all these other things. It actually made Ormus material that they actually ingested, and that's why they helped extend their lives through extending their telomeres on their, in their bodies. And, they just had all this other technology that everything else is just like redundantly talked about. I mean, I saw stuff as a kid, these little diagram things in museums of these, the pyramids being built like, slaves dragging shit around.
Right.
And I never thought, that was back in the 50s, and I thought, no way.
Right.
And then later on, I've come to realize, through getting into the Ormus field and talking to my friend Dr. Martin, who's has done, various private type of seminars and stuff about Ormus and so what. He was the one that introduced me into it about 10, 15 years ago. But, it's just like I've seen Ormus actually just, in a tube. You just barely heat it up. The stuff starts bouncing around like crazy because it just changes its whole, let's say, electron dynamic and creates a completely different field. And that's why most flying saucers, you have non-inertia type of fields because you're within a contained field, and when you're able to do that and project it onto stones, you pick up and literally just shove, and it's like screwed along at 100 miles an hour. It's and you don't take that many people because it wasn't done by human slaves or nothing. It was done by the Anunnaki way long time ago.
Thank you
for them to set up.
Thank you for the phone call, Lance. And I can already tell that the Ormus subject is going to get heated around here. Thank you so much for the phone call. Great phone call.
Okay. Yeah, good talking with you, man.
You're the best.
Good show.
Thank you so much. Yeah, go ahead.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, I'll talk to you. Great phone call. That's what I'm talking about. You call in, you got something to say. Amazing phone call. And there's another point to what Lance brought up. And let me just say this. When we talk about, pushing it and the effort isn't there. Today, a modern construction crane, the big ones, right, building skyscrapers, can get things, 100 yards in the air, 300 feet, right? 10 tons at a time, 20 tons at a time, one block at a time. The Egyptians didn't have that, right? Apparently. Maybe they had Ormus. But stop it. The construction methods that we have today, people talk about this all the time, but they don't really get to the point. The point is very simple. The cranes that we have today, think about what it takes to put a heavy air conditioner on the top of a building. Skyhorse-ski, crazy air crane helicopter, right? Think about that. And you watch them place one of those air conditioners on the top of a building. I've seen it happen many times. And just watch and how long it takes. How long it takes. It takes a day. Think about that. It is so difficult for us to pull stuff off like that today with all of our technology. And yet the Egyptians somehow at 2650 BC pull that off. I'm just not buying into it. I'm just not. It just comes down to logical sense. That's it. You know? Okay. All right. Check this out really quick. Man, I got 2 minutes left. Great show tonight, by the way. New footage of the Virgin Galactic Spaceship 2 spacecraft soaring high above the New Mexico desert during a successful glide test last month shows company founder Richard Branson right there watching the event, sipping tea, by the way. The beginning of Virgin Galactic's latest Spaceship 2 video shows Branson drinking takeout coffee. I'm not going to say what kind. And this was back on February 24th. And the VSS Unity was landing. It ends with him jogging alongside a crowd of people, high-fiving, you know. Now, Virgin Galactic plans to build a fleet of these vehicles. And it looks like right now the flight and each ticket is $250,000 apiece. Now, that's a small price to pay for each passenger to come back and report how the Earth is not flat. Think about that. I cannot wait. Oh, I forgot. They'll be looking through a special curved window that makes the Earth appear round. Branson is part of that conspiracy, the Flat Earth conspiracy. No, I kid. I can't wait. They're going to come back, cell phone videos of the round Earth for $250,000, and it's going to be one video after another. And I'm going to look so forward to all of it. Really quick, Amazon. Oh, no. Let me go back to this. A bill introduced in Oklahoma would let property owners destroy drones by removing the civil liability. Property owners are increasingly taking matters in their own hands when drones get too close and personal above your house. Oklahoma lawmaker Ralph Shorty's bill would exempt property owners from civil action if they destroy drones not regulated by the Federal Aviation Authority. The measure falls short of describing how a property owner could take down a drone, but recent events show that they're usually shot at. Oklahoma has a law against discharging a weapon within a residential area, except when it's in self-defense. To me, it doesn't matter how you damage the thing. As a private citizen, you have a reasonable expectation of privacy above your property where the public doesn't have access. End of story. You want to take out a drone? You do it. It's your right as an American. And this is Fade to Black. I want to thank Andrew Collins for coming in tonight. Absolutely amazing conversation. We're going to get the video up in our membership area for all of you to enjoy. We shot some great video. It's in high def. We'll get it up there. Fade to Black's executive producer is Rita Kamarian. Show's produced by Hilton J. Paul, Mark T. Kovar, LJ3, Renee Jonas. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Bob. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vitoa, Mark D. Kovar, Fadey by Dale. Webmaster, Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. Syndication is KGRA, The Planet. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2016 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Until tomorrow night, everybody be safe. Göbekli Tepe.